From being a scaffolder to actually getting into the Super Bowl, let's talk about how Jordan Mailata's dreams changed to become an NFL star. In fact, his very first dream for the Super Bowl was to sing at halftime. Can you believe it? The young Australian grew up in Western Sydney with a huge family of Polynesian immigrants. The Philadelphia Eagles offensive tackle Mailata used to cut school so he could watch the Super Bowl. Unbelievable, right? But you'd think he was interested in the game. That wasn't the case at all. Actually, Jordan was cutting school to watch the halftime entertainment over the game. That's right, and how the tables have turned now. In fact, Jordan's about to perform on the NFL's biggest stage as the man responsible for protecting quarterback Jalen Hurts against the mighty Kansas City Chiefs. Can you imagine that the former rugby league player and church choir boy who used to wait for the Super Bowl halftime is now one of its main attractions? I think it's a fantastic twist of fate, the 25-year-old said to the reporters in Philadelphia that as a child, he didn't really understand the game much. Instead, he'd mostly focus on the halftime performances. What's more, he'd dream about singing in the Super Bowl, definitely not playing in it. Seems like he never thought about being there when he was watching it. So, how did Jordan get from singing during the halftimes to playing at the Super Bowl? Well, the journey to this point wasn't smooth. After all, the Australian had to do odd jobs to pay the bills in between playing rugby. That's right.
But for Jordan Mailata, a rugby player who has never played American football, a chance may be all he needs.
If you went up to the younger version of this hulky guy and told him what the future held, he would have probably laughed at the notion. His mantra used to be about falling forward. Basically, don't have a plan. Don't fall backwards, just fall forwards. This is what got him through all these years of tough times. When asked how his younger self would react to what he's doing today, he had some really interesting comments to make. Jordan said that his younger self's reaction would probably have been of asking what the Super Bowl is. You're talking about that concert at halftime, he would have said. Isn't that crazy? Despite everything, he still made it to where he is today. I mean, he is literally one victory away from becoming the first Australian to play in a Super Bowl and win a championship ring. He's not alone. Aaron Siffus, his teammate from Melbourne, is in a similar position it seems. So how did the 25-year-old Australian get here? Well, through a lot of very difficult jobs and a life-threatening disease. Yep, his first sport was actually rugby league. He was having a tough time financially though, so he decided to try his hand at other jobs on the side to stay afloat. This wasn't any fancy work though. He tried his hand at stuff like scaffolding, carpentry, and demolition. But then when he was playing in Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs' under-18 side in 2014, he collapsed. That's right, he had a heart disorder. The young rugby player ended up having 2 operations to repair both the upper and lower chambers of his heart. Could this guy get a break? After this, he ended up gaining like 20 kilos because he couldn't exercise for a while.
Adam held us to the highest of standards. From the very start.
When he made his comeback, it was with the South Sydney Rabbitohs under-20 team, but his struggles were far from over. His coaches asked him to lose at least 15 kilograms from his 6'8" frame so he would be able to play longer stints on the field. After all, rugby league is free-flowing as you can't be overweight. Things were pretty intense as the contracts he was offered even included a stipulation about the weight loss. In the meantime, Mailata's management team was putting together a highlights package for rugby union club so they could see his talents. This reel would end up changing his life. Yep, it ended up in the hands of scouts in the NFL's International Players Pathway program. Sounds like a crazy coincidence to me. How can a rugby player catapult to such levels of success in an entirely different sport, and that too in a new country? Well, it's probably thanks to this reel. The legendary reel repeatedly showed an entire posse of men required to drag Jordan down on the rugby field. In fact, one unlucky player was bulldozed by him quite brutally by a particularly crushing tackle.
Show blitz back out of it, a 4-man rush. On the run, it's Smallwood. And room to run to the outside for first down yardage.
Now, what scout wouldn't be impressed by that? In fact, the weight struggle actually ended up playing in the NFL's favor. Jordan already had little to no body fat. His options were terrible: starve himself or chop off a leg. So he talked to his agency and they gave him some pretty good advice. They encouraged him to play a sport that would appreciate his bigger size. The Australian rugby player took a big risk and decided to switch. Mailata was about to try his hand at America's game, but seeing as he was completely new to the game, he had a lot to learn. Shocking everyone, Mailata managed to learn an impossibly technical sport without any experience in playing it. So many players had struggled to pick up the intricacies of American football. Many had been forced to give up, especially if they were from abroad. Even Mailata struggled. He said it took him an extensive period of development to learn techniques and improve. The Australian used to be the attacker in rugby and now had to switch. It was time to learn how to play from the defensive posture. This time around, though, his physical frame was in his favor. Finally, his massive size, which carried his weight well, was described as good musculation and thickness in the lower body. In fact, commentators would applaud his good physical traits. The International Pathway program shipped off Jordan to the IMG Institute in Florida, where he joined 4 other hopefuls. Their training was pretty brutal. They trained 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. This was all filmed for the NFL Network show called Undrafted. The former rugby player's luck began to shine. Even though he was inexperienced, the Eagles took a punt on him in the 7th round of the 2018 draft.
433rd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Jordan Mailata.
This was record-breaking. Young Jordan was the second player in history to be drafted with no American high school or college experience. As a matter of fact, the only person before him had been Moritz Boehringer. Sure, Mailata didn't feature in the initial 2 seasons in the NFL, but this was about to change. He used this time to learn all the tricks of being a top-level offensive tackle. The 25-year-old described this learning experience much like reading an entirely different language. Fast forward to today, and our guy has blossomed into one of the best left tackles in the entire league. What an impressive journey this man has had. I can't imagine how tough it must have been, but it's definitely been worth it all. He's literally just 1 game away from being crowned the Super Bowl champion. In his own words, Jordan's dreams only started 5 years ago. He knows that what he has achieved is a big deal. All the guys he's played with, his brothers, everyone has been dreaming about this since they were kids. Mailata said that he's living with them and through them today. I wish him all the luck as he enjoys this moment and takes everything in. He deserves this. All right, this was how Jordan Mailata's dreams changed over the course of his career. See you in the next video.